Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game from the AI Cup Division 1 winners section. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura, and this is the third game of their match where Hikaru really goes all out, so to say, because he lost the first game and he almost won the second game, but Magnus defended well. And in the end, there was a position where Hikaru was up a queen, but Magnus had two bishops for the queen. And I think also Magnus had like 4 pawns, Hikaru had 3 pawns, and they both had like 30 seconds on the clock. They agreed to a draw. So obviously Hikaru was not very happy with that one. He tries to really go for a win here with the black pieces, which means that if he does, they equalize the match, and it could get decided in game 4. But also it means that if he loses, then the match is over. So let's check it out. Magnus has the white pieces and he opens with knight to f3. So we start off with a Reti opening, but it quickly transposes into King's Indian defense, something that Hikaru is not only famous for but also is probably in modern times the strongest player to play such an opening. G6, we have pawn to e4, bishop to g7, and pawn to d4. The King's Indian defense is on the board, and we have castles, which is a pretty standard move. We have bishop to e2, the orthodox variation, also the top move against this line. And now you will see e5 is the main move here. Sometimes knight to d7 is played, but here we have knight to a6. Not extremely rare. It's the third most popular move, but again, it has been played by some very strong players. Rajabov plays it, Dingliren plays it, Jobava plays it. It's a good square for the knight. You will play c6, the knight will come to c7. Later on, maybe you will play something like e5. The knight can come to e6, and it will be very strong. Or you will give it up for the bishop here. Your pawn structure will get ruined, but white will lose the bishop pair. So many options. So here we have castles by Magnus, pawn to e5, and now bishop to e3. We have knight to g4 going after the bishop, and bishop to g5 attacking Hikaru's queen. We have queen to e8, and now d captures on e5. If you wait for e captures on d4, then the e4 pawn will be hanging. So Magnus captures, we have d captures, and now queen to c1. Supporting the dark square bishop here. Also, you will have maybe if the knight moves, let's say you kick the knight back, you can play bishop to h6, and you guys are probably wondering why bishop to c1, why not queen to c1, why not queen to d2? Doesn't this make more sense? You connect the rooks, also the queen is nicely supporting the bishop. Yes, but then black plays f6 and you don't have a retreat square for the bishop. If you go e3, of course the knight will just capture it. If you go to h4, which you can, it's not as potent on h4. So queen to c1 is a known move, and of course that's why Magnus plays it. So here we have h6 and bishop back to d2, and now king to h7. Now the knight can also move, as the h6 pawn will be sufficiently defended, and later on you will have some support for pawn to f5. So pawn to c5, also a pawn sacrifice that has been played before, because if you capture it, then knight to d5 is very annoying. You attack the c7 pawn, also the knight is hanging, and also if you defend it with queen to c6, then you can play bishop to b4, you pin the knight here, and it's not a fun position to play for black. So Hikaru just plays pawn to c6, and now we have bishop captures on a6. Here there are a couple of games that reach this position. h3 is a known move, but bishop captures on a6 is a new one. So now, as of move 14, we have a completely new game. So let's see what happened. b captures on a6. We have pawn to h3, kicking back the knight, knight f6, and now rook to d1. We have queen to e7, putting pressure on the c5 pawn, and bishop to e3. Magnus simply defends it. We have knight to e8. Now Hikaru prepares pawn to f5 in the spirit of the King's Indian defense, and queen to c2 now, adding more support to this diagonal. We have pawn to f5 and e captures on f5. And while you could capture with the bishop, g captures on f5 is more in the spirit of the King's Indian defense, and now you have to worry about e4, you have to worry about f4, and so on. So Hikaru definitely playing for the win here. We have rook back to e1, and now queen to f7. You don't have to worry about f4 for the moment, as the f pawn is pinned. So rook a to d1. Magnus puts both of his rooks on very nice files, d and d, and rook to g8, putting pressure on the white king. Here we have knight to e2, and now bishop to e6, just continuing development, putting pressure on the a2 pawn, and we have knight to g3 by Magnus. putting some pressure on that f5 pawn. So if the bishop captures, you might be interested in some knight captures and f5 action. And also, you still don't have to worry about f4 as the pawn is pinned. So king to h8, Hikaru unpins, and now Magnus plays knight to h4. And it looks like you maybe can play this, but if you play it, then knight to g6 check, and look at this. King h7, knight to f8 opens up a discovery, and also it's check from the knight. King h8 and queen to h7 will be a very nice checkmate. So after knight h4, rook to f8, clearing the g8 square for the black king. But now the rook also doesn't have all that much to do on f8. Magnus plays bishop back to d2. You could also play it to c1, but if you play it to c1, then you will not be able to shift it over to this diagonal. And here, Hikaru's position is not an easy one to play, but you could still play it. You always, the engine always says you're slightly worse when you're playing the King's Indian, but he has to play pawn to e4 or something like rook to d8. But he played pawn to f4 with the idea that knight to g6 check doesn't really do anything, as the knight on g3 is hanging, but not really. Magnus just plays knight to g6 with check, king to g8, and now, of course, knight to h5, and the rook is lost here. But okay, Hikaru obviously decided to give up the exchange, as he does have the bishop pair, like the bishop is coming to d5, should be okay. So bishop to h8, and the Magnus captures the rook. Knight captures, king captures, and now pawn to g4. We have f captures on g3, and now bishop captures on h6 with check. We have king to g8, and now knight captures on g3. Bishop captures on a2. Hikaru even takes a moment to grab a pawn, but not really to grab a pawn. He wants to play bishop to b3 to win some material here. So queen to e4, now shifting the queen over to g4 with check. Also, the c6 pawn is hanging. And now bishop to d5, defending the pawn, attacking the queen. Queen to g4 check, king to h7, and now queen to h4. Magnus now threatens all sorts of nasty discoveries here. King to g8, and now comes knight to e4. Also, a really awesome move is rook to e4, but this is rapid chess, not a lot of time for the players left, and there's really no good defense against rook to g4 check. If you block with knight to f6, then the e5 pawn is no longer defended by the bishop here, and if you capture, it doesn't really help. Just knight captures, and next rook to d3 to g3 is coming. But similar maneuver happened in the game. Knight to e4 first was played, queen to f5, and now rook to d3. Now shifting the rook to the king side to help out with the attack. Knight to g7, and now knight to f6 with check. King to f7, and now knight captures on d5. So of course you could capture back, but then rook captures on d5, so Hikaru takes the rook, so Magnus sort of gave back the exchange. But now comes queen to e7 with check. The quickest way is queen to f6 with check. I'm just going to show it because it's a lot of fun. King to g8, and now knight to e7 with check. King h7, and now bishop to e3. There's no defense against queen to h6 checkmate. You can only prolong the game with some silly moves, but we're not going to actually show those. So after this, queen to e7 check by Magnus. King to g6, and now queen to d6 with check. King to f7 and queen to d7 check, and it was in this position on move 41 that Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. If you go to g8 or g6, doesn't really matter. A simple discovery from the knight will win you the black queen on d3, and of course if you go to f8 to avoid any checks with the knight, then it's not a problem. Just queen e7 check, king goes to g8, and now knight to f6 will be checkmate, as the knight also covers the h7 square. So that's what happened. Very nicely done by Magnus. Winning game 1 and game 3 also means that he won the match. So it was a good opportunity for Hikaru to exact his revenge for losing his match to Magnus a few days ago. But as Magnus said before the game, revenge is a dish best served not at all. So there we have it. That's the game. Hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Sašidar Pita Purapu, Osef Treat, Helge Matriš, Jawilin Sutton, and GrizzlyChessFestival.org.gg from 15th to 21st of October 2023 for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day, and do use #suggestion if you have a favorite game from this event. See you soon.